Welcome to South Carolina Porch Gardener, guys. I'm standing here right next to my two Florida King peach trees. And I bought both of these at an extreme discount from my local nursery, 75% off, because they were dying. As you can see, the leaves on here are really dark. Some of them have turned red, but they're like purple. And this was looking a lot worse a few days ago. Some of them are a little bit curled, kind of folded on themselves like a taco. But what they're trying to do is minimize sunlight exposure. So these trees, I have two of them right here. They're both the Florida King peach variety. And these guys did not look like the other ones. These guys looked really, really bad. And by really bad, I mean all the leaves were dark purple. And some of these looks like they're starting to lighten up a little bit. So this tree is looking a lot better than it was. And I hope they continue that way. But, see, the nursery, they'll pump fertilizer into these things like crazy trying to keep them alive. But when we're in zone 8A right here. So it's been 110 degrees Fahrenheit for the last like 2-3 weeks. And these guys are out in direct sunlight. You gotta think, how long are you gonna last in direct sunlight in 100 degrees, with no water? Probably not very long. So you gotta make sure you're watering these guys, especially when it's hot out there like that. They don't need a ton of fertilizer. Think out in nature. What are they getting from fertilizer? Just the other plants that are falling down on the ground? They grew somehow, right? I mean, all the plants around us, all the trees around us, they pretty much only get, what nature gives them around. They don't get a ton of fertilizer all the time. You don't need a ton of fertilizer. When I bought these, the nursery told me, hey, you need to start fertilizing these things like crazy and maybe they'll come back. That's not what they need. They need water. Everybody does. And we're starting to turn these trees around. I don't have an automatic watering system, so I just sit my water hose on like this. I put mulch around the base. Make sure you don't pile it up too high. You want to make it pretty much level. If you ever seen the mulch volcanoes that go up like that, that is not a good thing because it can cause your trunk to rot. Your trunk down there needs to breathe. It needs to have airflow to it. Your roots should only be a few inches, or a little bit under the ground. They don't need a ton. Because if they're too full and you have dirt piled up around the trunk, it'll cause the bottom of the trunk to rot. It won't be able to get the nutrients up that it actually needs, that it can, and they won't grow and they'll die. So the main thing that these guys need, especially when it's 100 degrees outside, is that right there. Set the watering hose on them for like, an hour or two, especially at the hottest part of the day. Make sure it soaks in. I've noticed I have really sandy soil here. So whenever I was watering at first, the water wasn't getting down into the roots where it actually needed to go. The water would just slide off the sand. I tested that. I have a whole bunch of sand everywhere. It's just sand soil here. But if I spray it, all the water is just going to sheen right off. And I can flip over an 1/8 inch of sand and it'll be completely dry. So when I water, I need to make sure that I'm getting a ton of water in these things. And that's why I'm watering for so long, and that's why I have that mulch there, to keep some of that water in that area. So when I planted these, I kind of made a bowl around it, where all the soil around it would guide that water down into the gully. And I've just leveled up this mulch to be pretty much flat. So you don't want it to be up like crazy, but it needs to be where that water is going to pool. You want that water to pool right where those roots are, especially if you have well-draining soil like sand. But it needs to actually go in down into the sand, not just wiping right off. But this tree is turning around too. It's got a little bit of green growth up here. Some of these leaves have been falling off, but it's looking a lot greener than it is. And I'll keep you guys updated too with more. But that's just what I'm doing. Watering these things like crazy, and they're in part shade right now too. So some days they'll get a little bit of direct sunlight, but I'm keeping these guys cool, and they are coming back. That's all you got to do. Keep them a little bit cool. If they're looking too hot, cool them off. You know, just like you. You're not going to last that long out there in 110 degrees Fahrenheit with no water. These guys are the exact same. So don't listen to your nursery when they say needs a ton of fertilizer, because they were the ones that were killing it in the first place. Thanks, guys.